right, everybody. It's here. The day has come. It's been a couple weeks coming. We announced this a little while ago. And of course, there's always some scheduling issues. Got a busy guy like Thomas DeLauer. And of course, yours truly, e-celebrity, humble e-celebrity, Primal Edge Health here. And I'm so stoked to talk to Thomas DeLauer today of the Thomas DeLauer YouTube channel. Thomas, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I'm happy to be here. And I know it's been a long time coming. We've had some scheduling conflicts, but happy to make it work and happy to be here.
Well, we really appreciate you coming. We got a lot of people requesting this for months, man. I can't tell you how many times I'll
Right.
go through the comments and people are like, when are you going to collaborate with Thomas DeLauer? And we finally made it happen. So I'm here with the king of keto on YouTube, Thomas DeLauer. This guy's been talking about intermittent fasting, a ketogenic diet, and educating people on the ins and outs of keto, intermittent fasting, and showing people a healthy, sustainable way of losing weight for a long time. He runs a YouTube channel that I'm sure you've heard of, and I greatly appreciate you coming on today, Thomas. So, I guess I'd kind of like to start out by asking you how you got into all this. How did you get interested in keto, and then how did this become like a YouTube career? I mean, you've really built quite the channel out of this content that you've been putting out. So, how did this all start, man?
Yeah, I'll give you the abbreviated version just because I don't want to bore everyone and some of the people that have maybe seen it on my channel before. But the long and the short of it is my career started as someone in healthcare. I was an executive recruiter and a physician recruiter initially. That was like what I did right out of school. So I worked in the healthcare sector. And then after I came out of that world, I was part of an ancillary lab services company. So what we did is we provided essentially like salivary cortisol testing and all these different lab services to physicians in a fee-for-service model. So again, sparing all the gory details, the long and the short of it is I had a vast network of physicians. And when that organization started going through its acquisition, we were partially purchased by a hedge fund. When we were going through that process, that's when I was really struggling with my weight. That's when I was, 280 pounds, and was when I really needed to get my act together. My wife was suffering from autoimmune conditions, which was a big thing for me to, that was part of the impetus of really actually finding a way to change my life so she would also change hers. I was an athlete prior to that. So what was really wild was, unlike a lot of people that have struggled with their weight for a long time, I didn't struggle with my weight previously. My ballooning up was purely a result of making really bad choices. So a lot of my brand before it was even public, what I talked about was the fact that like it's how frustrating it is for people that were athletes to completely let themselves go and just go down a different route, right? So that's flash forward. A lot of the physicians that I worked with were the ones that turned me on to keto. They turned me on to keto through sort of a wraparound way. It wasn't like they said, Thomas, you need to do keto. I don't think there were any physicians, even at that point in time, that were really pro keto. It was still, this was, 2010, 2011-ish, where keto was there, but it wasn't hot. And so a lot of these doctors were talking to me about inflammation. They were saying like, a lot of these things you're doing are just bad habits when it comes down to inflammation. Yeah. Keep in mind, the doctors that I was working with were doctors that were working on what's called a concierge basis. So they would work with patients on like a fee-for-service model, highly affluent patients that weren't in the typical reimbursement system. They weren't, Blue Cross, Blue Shield. Yeah. They weren't normal people in the insurance continuum. They were people that would pay a doctor to be on retainer. Wow. So if these doctors didn't perform and didn't provide unique methodologies and unique mediums to actually get them healthy, they would get fired. So these doctors were really on top of the research. It wasn't the typical healthcare sick care type doctor that you would come across. So long story short, I had a vast network of really great physicians by my side, and they started teaching me how to change my diet in certain ways. I started seeing initial results through things like autoimmune paleo style diets, elimination diets, and I saw some success. My wife saw some success, but then I was connecting the dots back then that, okay, the root of this was all about inflammation. Everything I was doing was trying to modulate inflammation. So I was cutting foods out, reintroducing them, trying to determine different IgG, IgA responses, IgE responses. And then it kind of clicked upon a further research that, well, the fundamental way to modulate inflammation really did seem like doing through some kind of ketogenic type diet. So I started asking some of the doctors that I knew then, and it's like, well, yeah, the research is out there. It's pretty conclusive. It's not out there in the mainstream. So anyway, I developed a knack for the keto diet. I really liked it. My wife really liked it and adopted it as a lifestyle long before it was super popular. Yeah. Intermittent fasting sort of came after that as just a way to further enhance keto, because I learned that, okay, well, great. one of the ways that I felt the best, and one of the ways that my wife felt the best dealing with her autoimmune conditions, was generally by just not eating. Now, that sounds bad, but that was proof in the pudding that there were some issues going on, because it felt better when we weren't eating than when we were eating. So flash forward, got out of the healthcare world. I'm skipping a lot of details, but got out of the healthcare world, and then decided, okay, well, I want to see how far I can take this. I've lost a lot of weight, lost about 60, 70 pounds at that point in time.
Wow.
Can I get the body that I always wanted? So I, said, okay, well, I'm going to try doing a bodybuilding competition, here a couple years out. Did some of that. That was lame, and really just decided.
What was
at that point,
like, man? How were you used to the bodybuilding training? Had you done bodybuilding as a kid, or?
I was familiar with being in a weight room. I mean, I wouldn't say I'd done bodybuilder training. When I was heavy, I was doing a lot more powerlifting style lifting. Yeah. I would not, very linear movements, which I'm just strongly, I shouldn't say opposed to now, but definitely not my style now. I played rugby in high school, so I was familiar with a weight room, and I definitely liked to work out. Even when I was overweight, I still worked out. I just was eating whatever I wanted and was sedentary 98% of the time. Yeah. So that was a big twist for me. I was like, it's kind of the embryonic way of looking at things. You start getting in shape, and you see so many people, they start losing weight, and they're like, well, what's the next kind of proverbial thing to cross? It's like, okay, well, I'll try, a competition. I'll do a physique competition. That was honestly, I think I did more damage to my body doing that than I did actually gaining weight, because I was just so aggressive in terms of how hard I was dieting. I don't think that was healthy to get that weight. I honestly don't think it was that healthy. But anyway, the point is that after that, I realized that's not what I wanted to do, but I wanted to see if I could get myself on the covers of some magazines. I was kind of a 12-year-old little boy in me that always wanted to do that. Yeah. So I told my wife that was going to be a goal of mine, and went for it, and actually landed my first cover relatively easily. And that was just at the right time when the social media algorithms were kind of in my favor. And because of my brand and because of what I had gone through in my transformation, some of the mainstream media caught wind of that, and the brand was built. And then, given my background in healthcare and kind of understanding how to articulate more complex subject matter with the human body, I realized that I could speak to an audience in a different way with my transformation, but also being able to share, what I know about the human body. And the rest is just grinding, man.
There you go. Yeah, we see the grind, man. I mean, we're seeing the videos. You got 3 videos a week you've been putting out for at least, how many, 5, 6 years? How many years you've been doing YouTube?
Yeah, the channel's really only been rocking for 3 years strong. I mean, I was at a lot of Facebook before. And we say 3 videos per week, but we end up pumping out 6 to 7. I just keep it 3. I condition, say, hey, everyone, it's going to be 3 videos, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, but I try to put a video out every day. That way it's the big winners, the ones that I think people are really going to I push out on Tuesday, Fridays, and Sundays. But I have so much content. I'm like, if I wanted to get this out there, it's going to take me 3 years to get all this content out if I only do 3 a week. So screw it. I'm just going to put it all out.
Yeah. So you mentioned playing rugby in high school. Did you play any sports in college as well? Because you seem like such a conditioned athlete. I've seen clips of you sprinting, and I could just see it. This is not just a normal guy going and doing some sprints. You could see the efficiency with the movement, and it seems like you're very well trained.
Yeah, so when I was a cross country runner. So when I ran my first marathon when I was 11 years old. So I was a big runner when I was young. So my mom really pushed me in a really odd way. It's she was really hard on me, but in a good way. So in a good way, and I guess a bad way too. I don't know if I would want my son to run a marathon at 11. But
yeah, that sounds harsh, right? A marathon at 11. A marathon at 20 is hard.
It was. So I think I just learned to run. Running was always my thing. So I was never the best trackster. I wasn't too strong in track. 200 meter was kind of my thing. Played rugby. And then after that, I just like to stay in shape. It was, wasn't really a thing that I wasn't pursuing any sports. I was never, oddly enough, a big sports guy. Sports, rugby was a stretch for me, even being a team sport, because I wasn't a big team sport guy. I was always the independent sports. I was into rock climbing. I was into cross country, I was things like that. So rugby was a stretch for me. So after that, broke a couple of ribs in high school and put me out for a while. And then I was just I'm just going to stay in shape and have fun with this. So.
There you go. So you enjoy the training, not necessarily the competing, but the actual process of training and kind of refining the body is something you're really into.
Totally. And I have a bad habit of getting focused on your very one-track mind, right? So when I got into starting having success in my career, that's why everything laser focused, it's the other direction, and that's how I ended up destroying my body and gaining a bunch of weight and having to go through that.
Well, that laser focus, that's also how you built a 1.6 million subscriber YouTube channel. And you said in 3 years, dude. I mean, that's pretty impressive. You know, I mean, it's hands up to you, man. You've done a really good job with that. So as far as keto goes, and you mentioned your wife have an autoimmune condition, I think that's such a great introduction to, you know, two really different paradigms of getting into the diet, right? You've got somebody going for weight loss and then somebody dealing with an autoimmune condition. And you're definitely somebody who's probably come to the realization that it's the same dang thing. Like you're fighting the same battle. What kind of improvements has she seen since really changing the diet up?
Oh, hers has been, mine has been measurable with weight loss, but hers have been just astonishing. Her feats have just been much more amazing than mine. I mean, she had Hashimoto to a pretty serious degree. Her thyroid was practically useless. Yeah. She's within 6 months of going keto was completely off of thyroid medication, was completely off of the levothyroxine, was, her TSH is all back to normal. Her TPO antibodies are all back to normal. Everything just rocking and rolling. She had Lyme disease. We grew up you and I talked a little bit before the recording. We grew up in Northern California, which is like the epicenter for ticks with Lyme. So no surprise there. It was like, we met in high school. So it was like sport, pulling ticks off of each other. Like, honestly, it's like, we were just always doing it. It was par for the course. Hey, you got 7 ticks. Let me get them. It's like the Brad Paisley song. Yeah. But anyway, it was, so it was no surprise that she had Lyme. And of course the co-infections that went along with that. Now, Lyme is one of these things where you have to do pretty extensive antibiotic treatment to get rid of it. The antibiotics weren't doing a whole lot of good, but when she went keto, it must have done something where it helped break down what's called the biofilm and made it so that the antibiotics were able to do the job. So it was like antibiotic round after antibiotic, doxycycline, and then going keto. And then it was a half a round of doxycycline, and boom, she was like, just levels were back to normal. So she's had tremendous success. Now, as you probably know, with autoimmune conditions, a lot of times you'll just have one that's noted or one that's diagnosed. But more often than not, if you have one autoimmune condition, you probably have other ones going on too.
Yeah, they travel in gangs. They're gangbangers. They like to hang out.
Totally. So we don't know what else she was suffering with. She was having some of the antibodies that would be present in people with lupus, but she wasn't technically lupus. So anyway, she's had just tremendous success with that. And she, had battled with PCOS, she battled with some of these other, female issues too. Mm-hmm. So it was really difficult for us to even think about having a kid. And then, with us both being keto, I mean, it was so easy to conceive. That was like a huge thing. And that's a struggle that a lot of women deal with with PCOS or these like fertility issues. And the studies are showing that keto plays a big role in helping, especially people with PCOS become pregnant. So we've just had a lot of successes as a family. And it's not always things I talk about on my channel because my channel is so geared towards fat loss, and that's what people typically want to hear on my channel. Yeah. But man, it's changed my life. And every time someone bags on the keto diet and like tries to go for the jugular with me on it, it's like, you don't even know like what this diet did for my family. You don't even know what this diet did for my marriage. So, you can sit there and think about from the fat loss side and poke holes all you want, but I know. And that's enough for me to know that like my family exists today because of this diet. So that's why I feel indebted to it in so many ways.
That's powerful, man. That's really powerful. And yeah, the fertility issue is so big these days. I mean, so many people, young, healthy individuals, unable to conceive. And then they get on a high fat diet. They start feeding their body what it needs. They cut out all the junk food, and something happens. Just the womb opens up.
Totally.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. So congratulations on your kid. He's
Thanks,
2 years old or 3 years old now?
He's about 20 months, so he's getting up there. He's got the body of a 4-year-old. He's a monster. So
how tall are you? How tall are you?
Those fats, man. I'm 5'10". I'm average height.
Okay.
He's in like the 90th percentile for his height. He's in like the 80th percentile for his weight. He's in like the 95th percentile for his head. I don't know where he got that melon.
He's got the big dome. That's good, man. That's good. It's a well-fed brain. That fat-fed brain.
It's all. I was gonna say, yeah, it's all the DHA, all the healthy, docosahexaenoic acid from all the fish we feed them and everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What does his diet look like? Because I mean, that's a good transition. Talk about fertility, and that's something we like to talk about here on the channel a lot. It's not something that, as far as popularity of the diet goes, it's not the most popular reason that people get into keto. But I think this is a really big one, and I'm really appreciative of you bringing it up. But yeah, so
Yeah.
after conceiving, when thinking maybe that you wouldn't be able to conceive, after your wife conceived and had seemingly a very healthy pregnancy with a beautiful, healthy child, what does your kid like to eat? What's his diet look like?
So he's still a toddler at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So we're in a phase right now. Well, first of all, we started with baby-led weaning pretty early on. We found that it was difficult. Amber was having a hard time keeping up with the breast milk supply. And on keto, the benefit was here's kind of digress for a second.
Yeah.
If she was eating carbohydrates like shortly after the pregnancy, because people were telling her, okay, with breastfeeding, you should have some carbs in you. And it kind of made some sense, and I wasn't going to step in there. So the milk was interesting. When you put it in the fridge after pumping, you'd end up with like a half an inch of fat that would rise to the top. Well, then she was like, I don't feel good. I want to go back on keto. Let's go ahead and go back on keto while I'm breastfeeding. She goes back on keto. The overall volume of milk stays the same. Nothing changed there. But then when the breast milk would go in the fridge, dude, it was like cream top, like 2 inches of the cream, high fat stuff that would settle to the top. It was just so evident the amount of fats and just good calories that were just coming through that breast milk.
Yeah.
And everything turned a corner with breastfeeding. It was just like, we were on the fence of just like, this is terrible. Like, it can be for women, for those of you that have kids, and if breastfeeding can be a very difficult emotional thing for women, very, very tough, because a lot of times they'll see that as this is their purpose. And if they can't supply for their kid, it can be really just, so she was having a rough time. So keto, again, to the rescue, made it so that breastfeeding was a realistic thing. And so getting through that, flash forward, we started baby-led weaning pretty early. We're big fans of letting your kids introduce themselves to food and develop the ability to masticate and actually eat. So we did that. Of course, the first things we wanted to experiment with were things like lots of avocado, lots of coconut oil, lots of dairy alternatives. We used some like almond cheeses and stuff like that. I wasn't a big fan of introducing dairy at a super young age. I'm not anti-dairy, and he eats his organic and cottage cheese and stuff now a lot. So that kind of transition, we weren't going to keep him keto. I didn't think that was fair. He's got to develop a palate, but B, like, I want him to just understand food. I'm not like a zealot, and so he eats a
Lay
just a good balanced
Norton
diet.
says otherwise, man.
Oh gosh. I try so much to just be cordial with that guy. He just won't have it.
I saw the whole thing. Yeah, it made me kind of sad. I was like, Thomas is just so nice. Like, this dude's just hating. Sorry to bring that up. I had to.
No, it's sad. Unfortunately, I think there's something going on there. And so it's, I don't know what it is, but my heart goes out to him. Hopefully he can get some help with that. But it's when it comes down to, my kids, it was really a matter of just, okay, I want to introduce him to the foods. I want him, obviously keep the sugar out of the equation. So now, I mean, here's what's really wild. You're going to get a kick out of this. And this is just random and new. I noticed a couple weeks ago, or like a couple months ago, when he didn't like meat. Like, he wasn't eating a lot of meat. And that's kind of common for a kid, like for a small kid. It's like, it's harder to chew and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was really frustrating, but I cooked up some really good quality bison and he just devoured it. So then I was like, okay, well, I want to do an experiment. So I cooked up some even just good organic grass-fed beef next to some bison. He won't touch the beef, but he devours the bison. I don't understand. And this has happened time after time after time. So I'm just like, okay, maybe your palate is telling me something that my like desensitized palate doesn't detect in the store-bought meat or something, because you're loving this bison. So bison's a big part of his diet now. He loves eggs, loves egg yolks in particular. I think the texture of the whites is weird for him. So he eats egg yolks, he eats bison. He still eats, strawberries. We give him raspberries. Yeah. He loves his cottage cheese. That's like good quality cottage cheese. There's a company called Good Culture that's like 3 ingredients. So that's like a really good cottage cheese for him. That's the extent of the dairy that he gets. He'll get a little bit of goat milk from time to time.
Nice.
I don't like the quality of the any of the cow's milk here in the States. Yeah. So goat milk is a little bit it's less regulated, but it's easier to control the quality. So yeah, I mean, he really keep them off of the starches, off of the grains as much as possible. But again, we don't deny him those. We
Yeah.
just don't selectively give those to him. I still think he needs to develop a taste for him, and his body needs to be
Yeah.
accustomed to it. So that
Yeah, we kind of take a similar stance. You know, it's like we're not buying cake or anything and bringing it to the house, but sometimes we'll be in town and our daughter will say, "Hey, I want a piece of carrot cake or something." We'll let her have it, and she does
yeah,
fine. You know, there's no adverse reaction. So I think you're onto something there. You know, little
yeah.
homeopathic doses every once in a while to let them and see how it feels. You know, it's like, hey, if you eat too much of this, this is how you feel. Do you really want to do that,
Yeah,
or would you rather eat
exactly.
this? Yeah, that's cool, man. The bison's a funny
Totally.
one. What a surprise on the bison and
It's
cheese.
freaking weird. I don't know what that was all about, but I'll take
Yeah.
it.
What if you put cheese on the beef? I wonder if you would eat that. Because the kids, they seem to.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, they love cheese. They definitely love cheese. And but the cool thing is, and like, there's some interesting like plant-based cheeses that are out there too, that have seem to have the same consistency that he seems to like.
Mm,
Um, but we experiment. I'm not like I try to go for goat cheese or feta cheese, which he seems to like, just because again, try it's just a little bit safer in my book. But
yeah.
he loves goat cheese. I think he loves the consistency of it. So
Cool.
yeah,
Cool. So like even like a grass fed, if something like organic pastures. I know they're in California. They do some grass fed
yeah.
cheeses. Do you ever? How do you feel about that as far as like a product? Because it seems like you have some trepidation about dairy in general, especially in the U.S.
My trepidation with dairy is more so just maybe it's a little bit biased because I just don't feel good when I eat dairy.
Oh,
I mean, there's just a noticeable difference.
yeah.
I just did a video on my channel that went out a couple weeks ago on like the best and worst cheeses, just because I wanted to clear that up and stuff. And like a lot of it all just depends on what kind of cheeses you're getting. There's certain ones that are cultured a little bit more, and there's certain ones that are aged a little. Like aged cheeses tend to, they break down some of the other harmful components and some of the other sugars and things like that. So,
Yeah.
like Parmesan is usually totally good to go. In fact, video that just went on my channel today, which was like clean keto on a budget, like how to actually eat clean going to Walmart. And Parmesan cheese is probably one of the safer cheeses you can get at like a budget place, because no matter what, the nature of Parmesan cheese is being aged for 24 months, which gets rid of all the lactose anyway. So
Yeah.
it's, or a lot of it. So I'm not anti-cheese. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we definitely play around with it. I don't want to give him any raw cheeses or anything like that, because I don't know if his immune system, if that's the best thing for him. But
Right on, man. Right on. Yeah,
yeah,
always interesting to hear how parents go about feeding their kids, especially people who are heavily involved in fitness, like you yourself. You're somebody you tuned your body like a fine machine, and it's always interesting to see how people introduce foods and stuff. Um, so yeah, man. As far as the kid's diet, it sounds awesome. It sounds like the kid's getting everything he needs. Does he do fruit at all? Do you like fruit for him?
yeah, yeah. Usually, lower glycemic berries. So we'll
Nice.
do strawberries, we'll do raspberries. That's really about it. We don't do a whole lot of other fruits.
Yeah. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So, the last couple of years, you've been doing a ketogenic diet, and I really wanted to get into today. And you mentioned you haven't really talked about this much yet on your channel, so I really appreciate you giving the Primal Edge Health exclusive here. But let's talk about your recent experiments. You've done two different experiments that I think are really, really fascinating. The first one you did was a vegan keto diet, and the next one you did was a carnivorous diet. So
Mhm.
I'd love to start out with talking about the vegan keto diet. I'm sure that was a controversial subject, and I bet a lot of people were either really happy that you did it or really upset. But how did that come about, and how did it go?
Yeah, it was funny, and people really, I got so much hate for that, and I don't know if people fully understood that I do this stuff out of self-experimentation so that people can make their own educated decisions on things based on what I see.
Yeah.
Vegan keto was just something that I've never done a full vegan diet, and I was like, okay, well, it would be too much of a abrupt shift for me to say I am going to go vegan for X amount of time. Let's go ahead and go vegan keto. But a lot of it, the general push behind doing that was, to be honest, I was getting so much flack from the vegan community. It was driving me crazy. Like I was just getting called so many things because I talk about keto and how keto is the opposite of vegan. I didn't know this. I didn't get that memo, but apparently it is. So I wanted to say, like, keto lends itself very, very, very well to someone that is vegan. So it wasn't about Thomas DeLauer choosing to go vegan. It was about Thomas DeLauer proving to the vegan community that, hey, you can do this. And if you're willing to put down the Pop-Tarts for a minute and you actually are willing to eat these good vegan foods, like, you can do a keto diet and you can have a lot of success with it.
Mm.
Like, there's this obviously common theme amongst the vegan community that's just, as long, like, it's all about just no meat and no dairy and no animal products, but they forget about the whole other side of the equation, which is eating a balanced diet as part of that vegan diet. It's all very negative based, and I wanted to make this positive based. So that's how that came to be. And it was actually phenomenal. It was really difficult to sustain because I had to learn a new way of cooking. My wife had to learn a new way of cooking. And I think that it took a lot of effort that I probably wouldn't be able to maintain. But I felt really, really good mentally. That's what I will say. Yeah. However, physically, my strength went down quite a bit. If you look at the before and after pictures that I had put up on Instagram and stuff like that, I definitely leaned out a lot. I mean, I think I got down to probably about 5 or 6%, but it was, I looked a lot lankier, and it took me a good 3 weeks to get like my energy and strength back after a 2-week diet. Yeah. So that was the hard part. It was like my strength and my energy was down. If I wasn't someone that was an athlete, I think that it's something that would be realistic. Yeah. But I know I did turn a lot of vegans onto the keto diet that way. And the main thing there was that the keto diet, it's not to say that you can't eat a lot of protein. You can eat a ton of protein. The point with the keto diet, though, that I was trying to make was that because of the ketones that are present, if you want to, you can get by with less protein. And unlike other diets where really the protein needs to be a lot more of a foundation, the keto diet gives you more flexibility because it's so anti-catabolic. So I was trying to explain to the vegan community that this is your opportunity to not have to worry about one of the biggest variables and issues within the keto diet or within the vegan diet. The two biggest issues, 3 really. How much protein are you getting on a vegan diet? Are you getting enough B12? And are you getting enough omega-3s? Like good omega-3s, not alpha linoleic acid, stuff that has to go through a fermentation and conversion process in the body. That doesn't count. I'm talking about real omega-3s. So those are the 3 issues there. What if we do keto while a vegan, we can eliminate that big compounding variable there. Yeah. Like we can you no longer have to worry about how much protein you get to an extent. You are now capable of, if you can only get in 40 grams of protein, you're going to be fine because you're going to have enough of an anti-catabolic effect from the fats that you're getting that little bit of protein should be good for you. You're also going to be able to get a lot more in the way of like algal oil and at least some of the ALA that can go through some of the conversion. It's just going to make it a lot easier to accomplish that omega-3 thing. The vitamin B12 issue, I mean, that's still always going to be there. Combat that with however you might want. But I mean, it just works perfectly if you can maintain it.
There you go. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I think a few other things that I think people who are maybe considering, if you're considering doing a vegan diet, definitely look into also the fat soluble vitamin issue, right? Because there's certain fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, K2. Vitamin E you can find in some plants, vitamin K2 in some fermented plants, but vitamin A in the retinol form, and then vitamin D, these are very, very difficult to get on a vegan diet as well. So I think there's I think you're definitely onto something. The fats, I think, are a very major thing that people are missing on a vegan diet. And saturated fat. Let's talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on saturated fat? A lot of vegans are afraid of it. I think it's bad, whether it's from coconut oil or from beef. What is your stance on saturated fat, heart disease? What do you tell people when they ask you about that? You're doing a keto diet. Aren't you worried about your arteries getting clogged?
Yeah, I love the comments. They're like, I'd love to see, what Thomas's arteries look like. He looks so healthy on the outside. I'd love to see his clogged arteries. Oh my God, it's all about inflammation. That's all it is. So the quick, saturated fat, LDL cholesterol, all of that. There's so much science out there now that shows that it's not a direct link to any atherosclerosis or heart disease. It's the inflammation that is a secondary issue, usually from something else, usually from sugar and other, comorbidities, whatever. So when you have this inflammation, what's going to happen is you're going to have a flux of macrophages, white blood cells, that are going to flow through the bloodstream, and they're going to lock on to what is called an LDL receptor. And that's going to actually prevent the LDL from ever actually going into the receptor and doing its job. LDL receptors are good. We need those, and we need LDL because they're carrying cholesterol to where it needs to go within the body. If we didn't have LDL, we wouldn't have any testosterone. We wouldn't have, we need to have that. It's a carrier protein. So that LDL carries the cholesterol to where it needs to go. We have receptor cells, satellite receptor cells. And what happens is when we have a lot of inflammation, we have macrophages, white blood cells that clog that up. So a lot of the plaque that we're seeing is actually an immune response. So once again, we come back down to autoimmune issues. It all comes back to the immune system and our body having an issue there. then and only then does the saturated fat become an issue, because it's getting caught up in this already existing inflammation. Saturated fat has almost nothing to do with that. That is like super old school stuff. Saturated fat is, I mean, we need it for the proper myelination. We need it for our brains. It's critical stuff. And there's so many great sources that you can get it from. I mean, I literally just posted a video 2 days ago called it was the top 4 plant sources of saturated fat. Because again, this question comes up. Well, okay, I don't want to eat a bunch of red meat because, again, there's a common theme out there that red meat is going to be high
it's going to cause cancer,
the
TMAO. There's all these different reasons why red meat is demonized. I think they're all BS, by the way, obviously, because I eat so much red meat. But yeah. So what were the top 5 or 4 plant sources?
It was 4. So for that, it's coconut oil, of course, for one. Okay. Palm oil is really great. Palm oil is great too. Palmitoleic acid, just a different fat structure, carbon chains than coconut oil. It's just nice to switch them up. Then, of course, we've got, there's a couple different sources there, but I mean, one of the ones that I really like is using peely nuts, because you don't come across a whole lot of nuts that have high amounts of saturated fat. So the peely nut and like peely nut butter and peely nut oil, you're talking in 1 ounce of peely nuts, you're looking at like 10 grams of saturated fat. Whereas most nuts like macadamias, you're only looking at a couple. So super high saturated fat source there. And they're an expensive nut, but they're awesome. Have you tried peely nuts?
Yeah, I've tried them. A lot of people in like the vegan world are really into them because they're like an alternative to chocolate. They're non-stimulant, and you can make kind of chocolate, and they're very sweet. As far as nuts go, they're one of the sweetest nuts. But I haven't done them in, I've had a few bites. I've never really included them to a great amount.
Yeah, well, they're not the easiest thing to get your hands on, but they're pretty awesome. So it was that one, and then it was cacao butter, like straight up, like. Yeah, cocoa butter, cacao butter. So it's like when we're actually doing it, like if you were to make white chocolate, like the base of white chocolate, cocoa butter. So it's super awesome stuff there. So those are like what I would say the top 4 plant sources. There's not a whole lot of plant sources of saturated fat though. So that's almost it.
Yeah, so it does probably end up feeling a little bit restrictive. I mean, did you feel restricted on the plant-based vegan keto diet?
Yeah, there was a bit of like mental reprieve that came from it, because I'm like, okay, well, if it fits within these parameters, which are pretty narrow parameters, then it's good to go. Yeah. Like, it's just like, I didn't have to think about all these combinations, complex. I was like, and I was fortunate enough that my wife was really in a mode to get creative with cooking. So, so it was fun. It was very high fat. I mean, it was very low protein, very high fat. I'd say 80% of my calories were coming from fat. I had never craved a steak more in my life, though I will say that. So.
Yeah, that's funny, man. Yeah. So what was the first thing you ate when you came out of the vegan experiment?
I had to start it really, really easy though, because my stomach was just, I knew it was going to be a completely different gut biome and everything. So as much as I wanted to just dive into like a big ribeye or something like that, I really tried to control it. So I actually started, my wife made some soup. So my wife made just a little bit of soup with like some bone broth, some chicken, like some just gentle veggies in there. I think I put we put a small amount of chickpea pasta, just like a little bit of lentil pasta, just because I wanted to get some starches in me. I wasn't trying to get myself out of keto or anything. I just wanted to introduce my gut biome again to these newer foods. And then once that digested a little bit later, then I started introducing a little bit more meat. So and then by 2 days in, I was back to eating, more of a normal diet. So I really wanted to be super disciplined on that, because I know how much havoc it can wreak on my system if I like radically shift diets like that and then go back to heavy meat after not eating meat. Your digestive enzymes do change. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, a lot of vegans also have issues with low stomach acid, so they come off of a vegan diet, they start eating meat again, and they're like, well, I'm getting acid reflux, and they think they have too much acid, but it usually ends up being quite the opposite. We got a super chat here from Philodice. Thanks a lot for $4.20. Thank you for the tongue-in-cheek donation there. Says, they're doing something right. You two look great. All right. Well, thank you. We'll take that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I can't grow a beard like you, man. Try.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You got the gap. You get the gap in between. Just gotta.
I look creepy. Yeah, it starts coming in. I get a gap, but it just gets to a certain length, and it just doesn't go more than that, and it's just that's it.
Genetic. It's genetic. You could blame that one on the genetics. You couldn't blame the obesity on genetics because you knew you were an athlete as a kid. But the beard, that's probably just genetics.
It's probably the keto diet just messing me up.
Yeah, no, though it's always something, right? It's the arteries the arteries that are leading into your face. They're clogged, and you're not getting enough.
Clogged. That's exactly right.
That's all that saturated fat. So, well, how funny is it that we store saturated fat all throughout our bodies, yet it's still demonized? It's the most abundant fuel source that we store in our bodies, yet it's supposedly bad for us, even though it lines all our cells, myelin sheaths, you mentioned. Yeah, kind of an inverted reality we live in as far as the mainstream nutrition dogma goes. But
Totally.
speaking of inverted realities, you did a vegan experiment on keto, and then you decided, all these crazy carnivore people, maybe there's something to it. Maybe there's something going on there. I got to try this out too. So, yeah, how'd that come about? And let's talk about the carnivore experiment now.
Yeah, I wanted to do a carnivore experiment for prior to even doing the vegan, but just a little peek into the world of how Tristan and I have to run our businesses here. I wanted to do the carnivore challenge first, but it just wasn't there algorithmically. It wasn't trending as strong. So I was looking at previous trends of when carnivore was hot, and it was hotter towards the summer. And I'm like, if I'm going to do a challenge, I want to reach a lot of people. So plain and simple, I actually wanted to do the carnivore challenge first, but vegan was trending really hard then. I'm like, okay, well, now's the time. So a lot of my life, unfortunately, gets kind of dictated by, well, like I keep it within the ecosystem of what I want to talk about. I don't say like, oh, hey, video games are hot, let's go do a video about video games. But no, within the ecosystem of things I talk about, if there's something that is specifically hot right then and there, it'd be silly for me not to talk about that and be able to make a bigger impact because it's surging right now. So vegan was really hot then. So it's like, now's the time. So carnivore, I saw it building. So I was like, okay, it's going to be time in about a month. Let's just go ahead and ride this. So I explained what I was doing, reached out, talked to a few different people about how to like orient it and do it right. Prior to the carnivore diet, I started to wean myself off of fiber a little bit just so that it wouldn't be a super abrupt shift. I didn't want to, deal with any diarrhea or constipation or anything with that. So it was a smooth transition, but I was excited. It wasn't more about just the, people that were hating on me for the vegan thing. I think the crazy carnivore people have a lot of merit to what they say. It's totally, it's all like, it wasn't anything to try to prove anybody wrong. It was more so, hey, I've got this fire lit underneath me because I've got so many carnivore people that follow me. Like, let's do this and let's see what happens. If I can get other people to do it. And a lot of people that followed it ended up sticking with it and are having it be their main core. Nice. Carnivore is not something that I'm going to stick with, but I will say, and I'm going to talk about my experience, but I will say the end result, it is now going to be something that I phase in and out throughout the year because I felt really good in certain ways, didn't feel as good in others. So it was like, okay, there's benefits here. I wouldn't even say cons, but there were certain benefits that I might want to capitalize on in different periods of the year. So I found, okay, great. Now I have something new that I can rotate into and know that I feel comfortable with it, know that it's going to work. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to end up plugged up and not, poop for 2 weeks. So I ended up sticking with it for a month and it was great. It really was great. My experience was in the beginning, I didn't like it. I didn't like what was going on the first couple of days, but I knew that it was an adjustment that was going to have to happen. I think it was just a big shift in my gut bacteria. So there were some interesting, kind of things I had to overcome. And then by like 2 days in, I felt I was holding so much water. I was like, what is going on? This is so wild. Like, what's going on?
So you're like in muscles, right? You don't mean just like,
I was puffy everywhere. It was weird. I didn't know what was going on. And, it could have been anything. It could have quite honestly, we don't know like one iota about what's really going on in with our gut bacteria. So my guess, like when you look at like lipopolysaccharides, LPS, and what happens in your gut bacteria when there's big shifts, and just the LPS, so you have these things called lipopolysaccharides. When you have big shifts in your gut bacteria, you can have a big surge of lipopolysaccharides that come out of the gut into the bloodstream, and that triggers a huge immune response. It has nothing to do with what you're eating being good, bad, or ugly. It can just be your gut bacteria is like flipping on its head. Yeah. So I think that's what it was, and that creates a response in the brain, can actually make you depressed. The same kind of thing happened with vegan when I went vegan keto. So it wasn't like, so I knew going into this, I'm like, okay, this is kind of to be expected. Yeah. But then, I think I was doing things a little bit wrong, and I addressed it in an update on the carnivore diet. That I probably had too many. I added oils in that I shouldn't have added, and I think it was like messing things up. Because I'm a big believer of, again, you live in an area where it's easier to get your hands on higher quality meat. Where I live in Southern California, it's not that easy. Like I have to go to specialty butchers if I want to get really good quality meat. And I'm just that way. And, say what you want. You can, bag on me for that if you want, but like, I like to know what I'm putting in my body at this point. And I don't like a lot of store-bought meat.
No matter which way you go, there's going to be people judging you either way, right? If you're like, oh, I got to go all grass-fed, they're like, ah, oh, man, you're all orthorexic. And they're like, well, no, I eat some store-bought meat. They're like, oh, what, you don't care about the movement? No matter what.
Exactly. So, I just do what feels good for me. And if I can share it with people, great. But so I've always been a big fan of eating the leaner cuts of meat. And a lot of it, I've got a genetic sort of predisposition to gallbladder issues, and I don't think I produce a whole lot of bile. My sister's had her gallbladder removed, and my mom had gallbladder issues. My dad had gallbladder issues. So I got gallbladder issues on both sides. So I think some of mine is personal issues. I don't digest animal fats really, really well when I eat fatty cuts of steak. I just never have. So I've always been a big fan of keeping it leaner cuts of meat and getting my fats from other sources, which I've kind of made a little bit of a movement on. I've actually determined that, hey, like if you're doing keto and you're not doing carnivore, if you're doing keto, it actually works really well. Get slightly leaner cuts of meat. So go with your fillets or go with something that's a little bit leaner, and then get your fats from a source that you can control rather than trusting what is in your meat that probably has been fed a bunch of grains, a bunch of soy, a bunch of corn, that's going to end up getting stored in the fat. So wouldn't you rather eat a slightly leaner cut and be able to control and understand the fats you're getting in? That way you can get more granular with, hey, I need these longer carbon chains. I need this if you wanted to. And that's where I'm at. So I was getting all like scientific and like all cool about my carnivore experiment. And I think all I did is confuse people because I'm just like, I'm going to try to do this and this and this. And then I'm like, damn, Thomas, well, you're doing it again, man. Just dive in. So 4 days in, I was just like, F it. Like, I'm just going to eat fattier cuts of meat. And if I end up being an inflamed omega-6 monster, then I guess I find out. Right. So it was cool.
You could include fish too. It's like if you're worried about omega-3s.
I didn't.
Lamb, sheep and mutton and lamb meat. I don't know if you like sheep and mutton, but it has a lot more omega-3 and DHA in it as well. If you're concerned with that,
it totally does. And I didn't have any of that on my carnivore experiment. But I ended up finding a relatively local butcher up in Ojai, which is kind of a hippy dippy area. Ojai's cool. But it's like you can get some. So I found a butcher up there where I felt like, okay, if I'm gonna eat these fattier cuts of meat, at least I can go and get it from a nice local source. So I did. Yeah. And so I ate the fatty cuts of meat, and lo and behold, things started to change. My muscles filled out in a way they hadn't filled out. I don't know if it was the creatine naturally occurring in the red meat. Okay. I don't really have an answer for why that happened, but it was amazing. It was like I really did feel good. And it was about 3 weeks in after I did the update where I started to have my cravings for other fats and stuff again. And I was just like, okay, well, this is great. I really like how I feel, but I think this is going to be something that maybe I go and do a month at a time, like twice a year kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The point is I felt like the brain fog that I did have had been lifted, and I didn't have much brain fog to begin with. So I didn't think I could get a whole lot clearer. Yeah. The videos that I was filming, I should almost tag them within YouTube. You can see the specific videos that I filmed during the period, because what people also need to know about YouTube is sometimes I'll film content that's not designed to go out for till a couple months out, but it's just the research is there and I want to film it now, even though it's not going to go out for 6 weeks. So there'll be content, there'll be mixed matched. And it's you can tell the content I filmed when I was on carnivore. I was so much more articulate. Sometimes I'm human. I stumble over myself. It was just everything was just boom, right out of my mouth. It felt so clear. And so it was awesome. So I feel for big mental surges, but also my strength, that was what was nice. I'm accustomed to keto where I'm eating a decent amount of protein, but not a ton. Most of my energy is coming from fats, and I've kind of accepted the fact that I kind of sit in that aerobic threshold, and I expect an 80% version of myself as far as strength goes. It's just something the compromise I've made. Yeah. My cardio is phenomenal. So I go on carnivore, and my strength just bumps up significantly. I went up 35 pounds on my squat, and which is when you're already conditioned, that's a big chunk.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So it was that was really cool. And I don't do maximum lifts. I keep everything no more than a 4 or 5 rep max right now. Yeah. But it was nice to see that. Bench went up, everything went up. My endurance went up as far as my lactate goes. I was able to survive, struggle through that burn a lot better. So that was really phenomenal to see. So really, really just stoked with what was able to happen there. And that's where I realized, okay, when I need to go through bouts of time where I need to push for strength, carnivore is definitely going to be it. But there's another thing, and there's some studies to back this up. Like protein doesn't convert to fat super easily. And in fact, I just recorded a video on this yesterday because I got so interested in it. It's not going to go out for a couple of weeks, but like how easily and like does protein convert to fat? Like, can you overeat on protein? And there was a study that took a look at people that were in a 1,000 calorie surplus. And they were either in a 1,000 calorie surplus with high protein or low protein. Well, they gained the same amount of weight and the same amount of fat. The only difference just the same amount of fat. The only difference was that those that ate the high protein additionally gained lean body mass, whereas the other group didn't. So they both gained the same amount of body fat, but one group gained muscle and the other group didn't. So net over the long term, the people that gained the muscle are going to have a better metabolism and burn more fat over the long haul. Now, what else was interesting with that was that, I mean, they gained the same amount of fat. So people will say that, oh, well, if you eat too much protein, it easily turns into fat. Well, no, I mean, this study proved it. It was an 8-week study and they like overfed these people tremendously. Yeah. So knowing this and having this in mind, it put my mind at ease to know that like I could really like go all out. And not saying that I was going to be immune to gaining weight. I could still gain weight if I just overdid it on the fats and everything, the calories in general. But I was like, I can eat a lot of protein and not worry about it converting to fat. So I felt like my calories were higher than they normally are. And I was still able to lean out and felt significantly better there. So I think all in all, the experiment was a win. And it helped me cross some bridges. It helped me get over some of the fears of excess protein that I had before. This is all a growth process. And, you know, people think that I'm their guru and that I'm like, just like have all the answers. The only way that I come to these conclusions and come to these answers is through my own self-experimentation. And sometimes that means that I learn and grow. And sometimes I prove myself wrong. And so it was cool. It was what I needed to get through a lot of these barriers that I had. So since coming off of carnivore, my fat intake is actually less on keto and my protein intake is more. And I feel like I've learned things that are helping me in my keto journey now. So it was great. It was great. And I highly do recommend it, especially for people that have autoimmune issues, because I overstepped and I didn't even touch on that. I mean, the reason I wanted to do this was, again, because of how near and dear autoimmune issues are to me. Like when you're eliminating the things that cause autoimmune issues, which are pretty much everything but meat, then
for some people, right? Like some people, they just seem to be able to eat anything and nothing affects them. And then others of us, we're acutely reacting to all these things. And you know, I'm not pooping 15 times a day, or I'm no longer, you know, in chronic pain and itching all over. And this is something we got to listen to.
It totally is. It was very interesting. And to see that the carnivore, you know, my kid brought home 3 little colds, like little sniffles and stuff like that. One of them was a doozy, but 2 other little times where I could tell he was getting sick. And, you know, I didn't pick it up. I felt like my immune system was actually heightened in a good way. Like I feel like everything was on alert and working in a way where it wasn't taxed. So I feel like if you think that you're struggling with some kind of autoimmune issue, or you think that you're struggling with food sensitivities or intolerances, going carnivore might just be the reset button that you need. So I encourage people to not see it as a lifetime commitment. It doesn't have to be something you do forever, but it's definitely not something that should be thrown away as something that's just this masculine carnivorous thing. The carnivore diet, unfortunately, the term carnivore just leads people to believe that it's just this hyper aggressive, just macho thing.
Well, we used to call it zero carb, like before the carnivore. I mean, whatever happened with the algorithm, you guys can all thank YouTube and Google for making it called the carnivore diet, because we had nothing to do with that. We called it zero carb back in the day. You know, Amber O'Hearn, there was a website, Zero Carb Zen. So people have been doing this for a while. It's just, for whatever reason, carnivore caught on. I think it's just maybe had to do with the whole vegan movement becoming so big, and there having to be kind of a counterbalance of online presence for that. But yeah, thanks, algorithm.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. It's like it paves the way for so much of what we do these days, or how we look at things. But the long and the short of it is, my mind has shifted with that, and it's definitely going to be a tool in my toolbox. I'm all about adding different tools in my toolbox, and you know, I thought that when I would come off carnivore that my body was going to react to all these different things. And no, like that was what was cool. When I came off vegan keto, my body was super sensitive. When I came off carnivore, I felt fine. Like I felt like, so the way that I came off of carnivore, I tend to come off of aggressive diets with usually like a little bit of fasting or anything like that, try to switch it up just so I have a little bit of a period for things to sizzle. So I just did a day, like 24 hours of bone rough, just to kind of bring my gut back down to just normal, let some digestion occur. As vivid as this might be, have a couple bowel movements, get things out like and move on, and then be like, okay, reset and go back to my own ways of doing keto, but now with slightly less fat and more protein. But still, with the indoctrination of these fats, I was expecting to bloat from macadamia nuts. I was expecting this, and nope, nothing. Just like nice flat stomach, boom. I was like, this is great.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and a lot of people, they're concerned. Well, if I try carnivore, is it going to make me so sensitive to everything? A lot of people are worried about that. But it seems like for many people, it's a great baseline. You can always go back there, and then you start adding foods in, and you see if you react to any. And some of you may find that there's certain classes of foods like oxalate, for instance. A lot of people have high sensitivity to oxalate, and it sucks because I love chocolate, but a lot of people, they can't handle it. So, just finding what you can handle, and if it's, if it's lectins, if you don't do very well with nightshades, and you'll figure it out if you add foods in slowly. And I think this is some great advice. Use it as a baseline. Don't be stuck on, I've got to do it this way forever, or I must do keto this way forever, or I'm going to do this macro spread forever because it works right now. It's like these tools work right now in that context, right? I mean, when you need a wrench, you need a wrench. When you need a flathead screwdriver, you need a flathead screwdriver. So there's different dietary pathways that you can take for different situations, and I think that's a really good philosophy that you kind of expanded on there, man. So definitely. Did you notice, a lot of people notice, you're in front of the camera all the time. You're outgoing, you're good looking, you're a very magnanimous person with a magnetic personality, and you like to deal with people and talk to people. Did you notice anything with like anxiety and general social interaction that changed with carnivore? Because that's another thing that I hear so much is depression, anxiety gone when they remove plants. And that's even going from keto to carnivore. We see a lot of people who are seeing that.
Yeah, I've been the last couple of few months have been just a lot of stressful things in my life just for different reasons. And so sleep has been a little bit of an issue. And I noticed that sleep improved. Nice. Now, I did also started doing a little bit more in the way of red light therapy during that time too, which also has been shown to have some positive effects on sleep. Are you big on that?
Yeah, man. Check out. I got my little Juve Go right here. We got the
nice.
We got the Juve set up right there. Oh yeah, got that the Juve Max, or no, what do they call it? The Juve. Yeah. What's the mega Juve or something? That's awesome.
Yeah, something like that. All I know, it's awesome.
Right.
So that I think that's had a big effect on my sleep too, because I've continued to do that, and I think that we can probably have a whole nother conversation on that if we ever wanted to. But red light's been pretty interesting. At first, I was like, "This is some woo-woo weird stuff," and like, no, I'm just gonna try it. People that really do it, like use it, swear by it. So anyway, but like prior to even that, the carnivore really had changed. It changed my sleep a lot. I was waking up in the middle of the night. Like I'd get up to pee in the middle of the night. I usually get up to pee like once. Get up to pee in the middle of the night, and I'd get back in bed, and I'd just be like boom, 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 like just thinking about all this different stuff. I'm like, I've never had an issue with that in my sleep. I've always battled anxiety. I've battled anxiety since I was 11 or 12. And it's definitely, it's no fun. And people that suffer from anxiety, it sucks. It's horrible. It doesn't matter how big
Is that
of a
part
man
of what
you are,
drives
whatever.
you? Is it part of like maybe what gives you a little bit of energy? Because it's kind of a boost, right? You get that constant fire under your heel.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So it's like, and then I have anxiety about losing my anxiety. I don't want to
Right.
lose so it's like, oh, that's what gives me the edge. Like being a little bit of just kind of a high strung guy is kind of what gives me that. Do I really want to change that? I'm like, well, if I can bottle it and use it when I really need it, but so the thing that I've learned is being able to control it. And that's exactly what carnivore did. It didn't erase my anxiety, but it raised my awareness. So it raised my awareness, and I felt like I was able to control it. And I was able to recognize before I was getting anxious to a point where I could stop those catecholamines from doing their thing. So one of the things as an analogy, like right now this is kind of fun, but I'm learning to fly helicopters. I'm working towards my helicopter pilot's license just because it's just something I've always wanted to do. And like helicopters are so sensitive. And if you've ever flown in a helicopter, you know that they've got multiple controls, right? You've got what's called the Cyclic, which is like what is adjusting, your helicopter kind of essentially tilting the rotor's pitch forward. Then you've got your collective, which is kind of your lift. And then you've got pedals, which are adjusting your trim. So you're moving everything. But the whole idea is to be able to anticipate the movement of the helicopter by getting the feel of it before everything happens. Otherwise, you end up in really just gnarly situations that are really hard to get back, and it happens very quick. And it was like, that was like the analogy for my anxiety. It was like, the anxiety, if you catch your anxiety after it's already started, it's very hard to bring it down. And the physiological effects of the anxiety have already started that hormonal and enzymatic cascade, if you will. But if you actually are aware and self-aware enough to notice that you feel it coming and you know when it's there, then you can adjust it and begin your diaphragmatic breathing or do whatever. So it raised my awareness. So I think just the heightened cognitive function that came from carnivore is what allowed me to do that. So I don't know if it did anything at the dopamine level or anything like that, or it helped me with that. But I also noticed my tendency to want to check my phone, my little ticks, little fixes that I would normally go for. YouTube stats, email, this, that, things that I would like were gone, and they've stayed gone. That's what's nice. So I think it actually did some things in a lot of different ways.
That's really amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned, diaphragmatic breathing affecting anxiety, and gut bacteria is just such an interesting thing. And I don't think we know half an iota of what people think they know about the gut. But the gut microbiome has massive shifts according to all sorts of different things. I mean, hormonal states can change the gut microbiome instantly. We can change it via, thoughts, right? So like certain anxiety states might be just electromagnetically feeding certain gut bacteria, and, the lack of breathing, and we get tension in certain parts of our body, which would, create energy flow that'll be different. I mean, there's so much going on there. And I think the gut is so intimately connected with the brain. And our physiology is so dependent on our digestion that it becomes so clear to people when they stop eating the foods that are making their gut inflamed, that are disrupting their digestion, that they just function better. So all right, so the animal fats. At first, you were thinking, I don't know about all this animal fat. There's a lot of toxins are stored in fat. Just a question: are you concerned about the toxic load in plants? Because I look at it so differently. I look at animals as I look at animal fats as the cleanest fats out there. And I think we probably see this quite differently. You kind of maybe see plant-based fats, coconut oil, olive oil as being a little bit safer. Whereas, I'm looking at the animal fat and I'm thinking this animal is converting, raw grass material, raw herbs into this edible, digestible fat. You mentioned, the area we live in Ecuador, so we do have a little bit higher quality food here as far as the beef goes. But have you changed your views at all on the veracity of animal fats, the cleanliness, if you will, of animal fats, and or are you still a little bit concerned about the quality of that?
Yeah, very good question. So I'm concerned to a degree, but it's in a different way now. So my newer kick is some of the science that's out there surrounding omega-3s in your animal fats versus omega-6 versus the uncontrollable aspects that I used to talk about a whole lot. And what I mean by that is studies are now showing that you can overeat omega-3s and it doesn't go towards body fat as much because it contributes to the phospholipid bilayers. So, and there's a lot more science that's even coming out on that now. So it's really cool. So now, because some of my concerns have somewhat been mitigated by carnivore, saying, okay, I didn't die. I actually felt great. But it was, but now my focus is more so on, okay, having less concern about getting fats from an animal source, not worrying about that as much, but still paying attention to the omega-3 content of those. So I still get concerned about the quality of the meat and the fat that's coming in, because the omega-3 versus omega-6 content of really good quality raised meat versus low quality meat is astronomical. We're talking 1/60th of the amount of omega-3s. Right. So the potential
to be fair, just to throw this in there, what about people would make the apologetic statement that there's such a small amount of those omegas in there anyways that it might be splitting hairs to be concerned about it if you're still getting in fish and stuff. Do you think?
Yeah, if you're still getting in, agreed, totally agreed. If you're getting in fish, then I think what's going to happen is, this is somewhat of a hypothesis, but the omega-3s that make up a large amount of the fat in fish are going to vastly supersede what you'd be getting from your red meat, or from your meat in general. And chicken, honestly, the fat in chicken is never going to be super high quality anyway, as far as omegas are concerned. It's just doesn't have that kind of fats in it. And almost all chicken is, at least around in the States, no matter what, even if it's organic, is going to be fed soy and stuff like that. So you're with chickens, almost be more concerned with the estrogenic effects and stuff.
Yeah, so it's funny because I don't like chicken. I'm not a big fan of chicken, and for that very reason, the fatty acid profile just being not what I want. It's
Yeah,
all
it's just
corn.
not. It's with chicken, I'm definitely like just go lean because the fatty acid profile sucks. Just go with a breast. So I'm not like you'll be like, oh, what about chicken thigh and something like if you really want it, but honestly, just go for chicken breast. So my opinion on the fattier cuts of meat has definitely shifted. I've
Yeah,
definitely I enjoy them more now with some peace, knowing that I think what I liked before was just the controllable aspect. So what
yeah,
has been difficult for me is you can take two ribeye steaks, one that are the same weight, and one could have 20 grams of fat and one could have 40. So it's really hard for me to like get down to that granular level of
yeah.
what am I consuming. And that's always going to be an issue. But the nice thing was with carnivore, I didn't have to think about that. So it was
True.
like,
Yeah,
that was just like, okay, it is what it is. I'm not going to
yeah,
grossly overeat. So, there's been some shift in how I look at those fats. Definitely to, I don't want to say, I guess a more mature degree. And in some ways it's had me pull out the microscope even more, which is frustrating for a guy like myself, because now I just investigate things to a different degree. That's what I'm always going to do. It's just who I am,
yeah.
you know? But
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's funny because your results as somebody who's super healthy and who was already using a ketogenic diet in a therapeutic way in your family, with your wife, with yourself, and you found that carnivore gave you certain benefits beyond that, but that you were able to keep the gains even when you went back to eating more plants. I think that's a really
yeah,
good lesson.
totally.
So people
Yeah.
maybe don't be so afraid of the plants. I definitely think that there is an issue with anti-nutrients and with overdoing certain anti-nutrients. Like, I mean, I'm not a big fan of spinach anymore, but after learning all about oxalates, and I guess maybe that's a good transition. What do you think about some of the dialogue going on right now concerning anti-nutrients is one of the catchwords that you see in the sort of carnivore world,
Yeah.
and one of the ones that I find to be the most interesting is oxalates. So, what do you think about this? Spinach, almonds, these are all very, very high in oxalate, which can bind up to calcium, which can create
Yeah.
some electrolyte imbalances, which can create other issues as well beyond that. But I find that when working with clients, people have to supplement much less and concern themselves with electrolytes far less on a carnivorous approach. And my
Yeah.
kind of my theory is that we're dealing with less anti-nutrients, makes it more bioavailable and easier to kind of balance the levels there. I know I loaded up that question a lot, but what do you think about the anti-nutrients and especially oxalate?
Yeah, I mean, so when you're looking at, I mean, essentially call them like natural chelators, if you will, there's some benefit to having those to some degree, but also I think the negative attributes far outweigh it. So the positive benefits are, chelation of iron, like some of these oxalates can chelate iron, which if we have excess iron in our gut is actually not a good thing. If we have excess iron in our gut, it's not a good thing. We
Yeah,
need to Iron is one of those things where if you think about it, if you leave iron outside, it's going to oxidize when it gets exposed to things, oxygen, and it's going to rust and it's going to, basically become just useless, but still there.
yeah,
So you're gonna have this like skeleton in a way. So oxalates can help chelate and remove that. But the unfortunate thing is they also chelate with the vital minerals, like, the various forms of magnesium and everything like that. So it's one of those things where I hate to say it and sound cliche, but moderation. But I am a big fan of keeping almonds to a minimum anyway,
okay,
because the phytic acid, the oxalates, things like that, they are hard to break down, not only because they zap some of the minerals. I think that's kind of a negligible effect, but I think more than anything, they are hard to mechanically digest and they're hard for the body to break down.
yeah,
They are designed, these like phytic acid is designed to help a seed or a nut pass through an animal's digestive system so that it can survive and continue to germinate, like
yeah.
continue to.
Yeah, it
So
binds
it's
up those minerals so that it can keep them,
yeah,
so that when it germinates in the
exactly.
soil, it's got all the cofactors for the enzymatic reactions to create a freaking plant.
Exactly. Which is, I mean, say what you want. It's freaking miraculous. Like
Yeah, it's
it's so
amazing.
cool. Like it's so cool, man. So I think you just got to go easy on it. So like
Yeah,
I keep nuts to a minimum. I try not to consume more than like 1 ounce, 2 ounces of nuts tops per day anyway, even
yeah,
when I'm, strict keto. So for that reason, spinach, I've never been a big spinach guy anyway, and it doesn't have much to do with the oxalates, but they are very, very high in spinach. So if it's something that you're concerned with, it's kind of funny. It's like we tell people to eat spinach to get more iron. And it's like paradoxical, right?
yeah, yeah. Same
Like,
calcium, right? You
so
look at the calcium or the potassium, and it's going to bind up to the potassium and the calcium, so it's not really going to be absorbed. And
yeah,
yeah, I think it's the carnivore world. For in all its madness, it has brought a lot of these issues to the forefront, and I think these are very important issues, right? When we're looking at at a piece of paper that tells us the nutrients that are in a food, that is not necessarily going to correspond to what we absorb and what actually happens physiologically in our bodies, right? So I think it is opening us up to the complexities of these metabolic pathways. I mean, especially when we see people. Here's something you might find interesting. There's a guy, he's on Twitter. I forget the guy's name. Forgive me, guys. But he did gut microbiome testing before carnivore and after carnivore. And he ended up finding that on a carnivore diet, his gut microbiota diversity increased greatly. And he especially saw an increase in B vitamin producing bacteria, namely folate producing bacteria. So not only is it like the nutrients being absorbed, we could be seeing a difference in the bacteria that create certain nutrients that shifts dietarily, whether that be between a vegan diet and a keto diet or a purely carnivorous diet. This is another thing that, you know, Thomas is always talking about. The gut microbiota is pretty interesting and important too.
No, definitely is, man. And it's we're just scratching the surface of that. And unfortunately, it's just not hot enough where it's like, even when I put videos out about there, they go nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's a bummer because it's like, I think it's probably just because I think like the probiotic industry and things like that have probably just like saturated it with just like the not so exciting side of things, just like being very blanket, simple, stupid statements that aren't even exciting so it's sort of had everyone turn just a deaf ear to what's really cool about the gut microbiome. Yeah. I guess I need to go back on carnivore. The gut microbiome. So it's really, really interesting there. So hopefully we can start getting some more traction and people will start taking an interest to it a little bit more so that, you know, guys like yourself and myself can put the content out there so people can learn about it and just do the education, that their own due diligence on it, because it's wild.
Yeah. So I'm always encouraging people to dig a little bit deeper. You know, I mean, you hear us talking about some of these topics, and there are people that specialize in every single one of these topics and go real deep into it. So if you're interested in learning a little bit about things like, you know, cholesterol, definitely check out guys like Dave Feldman, cholesterolcode.com. He does a great job. If you're interested in more of the talk about anti-nutrients as well as like nutrient density, I would direct you towards Amber O'Hearn. We did a recent podcast with Amber O'Hearn. We talked about a lot of fascinating issues that Thomas and I touched on today. But hey, I got a super chat here. Genius Track sends $5. He says, do either of you know why my creatinine levels skyrocket every time I'm on an intense training program? Great question, man. Thomas, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually, first of all, I mean, nothing that I say can be misconstrued for medical advice, because I mean, you can always have other issues going on, but that is pretty common. I mean, creatinine is a byproduct, and what happens is when you have protein degradation and you have protein turnover occurring in your body, you're going to have, like, part of the deamination process is turning it into taking from nitrogen, putting the amino acids to use, and then you're left with a carbon skeleton of that actual amino acid. That carbon skeleton then gets broken down and excreted. But when it gets broken down and excreted, it's either turned into, or before it's broken down and excreted, some of it is either turned into glucose or some of it is turned into ketones. We have glucogenic carbon skeletons and we have ketogenic carbon skeletons. So they kind of do their job, and then whatever is left over gets converted into ammonia, and then from there we excrete it out. So sometimes it's the ammonia that can cause our creatinine levels to just by default sort of skyrocket. So if you're on a training regimen that's a lot more intense, one of the things you just want to be careful is make sure that this sounds funny, but make sure you're getting enough protein, because sometimes this could be just a result of that, where your body's just breaking down other things. Creatinine is pretty complex, and there's a lot of different moving pieces on that. So you do want to look at your total, BUN levels in your urine, like your ammonia levels overall. I would make sure that you keep a lookout and overall, like, what your ALT and AST enzymes are doing in your liver, just because you want to rule out any secondary issues. So
there you go. All right, we got another super chat here. Anthony Agan says, hey, Tristan, you're going to be making a video about vegetable police and his kidneys. Also, thank you both. You two are awesome and changed my life. Anthony, thanks, man.
Awesome.
I'm honored.
No, that's
I'm
awesome.
honored. Yeah.
Thanks, Anthony.
I can't tell you how many people have come to my channel or, come to me for coaching, and I've said, well, how did you learn about keto? And very often, Thomas DeLauer. Every once in a while, Eric Berg, Thomas DeLauer. But these two guys, Dr. Eric Berg and Thomas DeLauer, have probably turned more people onto keto than almost anybody on YouTube. So, yeah. I gotta give
No,
props.
that's awesome.
As far as the question about vegetable police and his kidneys, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. I haven't been following his content lately, but thank you for the suggestion. Maybe I'll look into it. Um, Cool, man. All right, so we've been going for a little bit over an hour now. I really appreciate all the time you put into this. Any last thoughts on your carnivore experiment? We want to close up this section, and then maybe if the audience has any more questions, you guys can feel free to throw the super chats out there. What are your final thoughts on carnivore, and what kind of applications do you see yourself using this for yourself and for clients moving forward?
Yeah, I think carnivore is, I think for people that are first getting started on anything, whether they, if you're not keto already and you're just like you're paleo or you're just standard American diet or standard Western diet, you're going to see tremendous benefit from carnivore. So I highly recommend that. If you're existing keto, dip your toe in the water, because I've heard different things. My experience going from keto to carnivore was great, but sometimes, there's mental roadblocks that you're going to have to encounter there. I feel like the effect is going to be more profound from someone that is not currently doing keto, because you're going to get the effect of the ketones, but you're also going to get the effect of the immune response too. So definitely there. And then, and Tristan, I've got to try to wrap up in like 3 minutes. Yeah. I've got to drive somewhere for a meeting that I've got to be at noon. So maybe we'll just, if there's like 1 or 2 questions that I can answer while I'm still here.
We're good, man. We're good. No, you driving that Camaro or what? What's up with that Camaro?
No, my Nova. No,
it's a Nova.
No, my Nova.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm.
That thing is sick.
You want to know where I'm actually going? I've got another helicopter lesson, so I'm actually going to go drive down the hill to the airport. So.
That's cool. I gotta fly a helicopter for about 5 minutes in Boy Scouts when I was like 12 years old, and it was one of the coolest experiences. I got to be co-pilot and they let you take control. That was really, really cool. That's cool, awesome. Man. Yeah. So what's up with that Nova? What year is that thing?
That's a 72. So 72 of the 502 big block. So right now I'm getting electronic fuel injection put in that. So it's a big old carbureted beast. So it's awesome.
What kind of carb did you have on it before?
Just good old Holly 4-barrel. So I mean, it's got like wanted to go with the EFI just so it can be a little bit more smooth, a little bit more reliable.
Are you doing the Holly Sniper, or what are you doing?
Exactly what I'm doing. So, and I'm doing the throttle body, not the direct inject. I wanted to do the direct inject, but honestly, it just overcomplicates things. Yeah. And I think the whole throttle body setup is it's sweet. That Holly Sniper is just, it's so.
So you got to get an electric fuel pump, right? You got to install an electric fuel pump in the tank.
Yeah, and going with the stealth fuel tank, which are in right now too.
Yeah.
And then like the new MSD distributor that actually can do away with the MSD ignition and go with a new. It actually like finds the crank and the cam with a laser, so it times everything perfect with your EFI. So it's gonna be so
that's
awesome.
What I need, man, because I'm up in the mountains. We're always changing altitude and the weather changes. And I got this, I wish I never installed it, but I'm glad I have it. But the air fuel ratio, I'm always watching that. And if it's off, I'm like, I'm always thinking of, I cannot wait. One day I'm going to do the same. I can't wait to stop tuning this dang carburetor because I love it. It's fun. It's so much fun. And it's a hobby, but I would love to do the Holly Sniper. So I'm excited for you, man. Get carnivore, Holly Sniper. You got all sorts of good things going on right now. Thomas DeLauer, you guys make sure to subscribe. I'm sure you're already subscribed, but subscribe to Thomas DeLauer's YouTube channel. I'll put a link. It'll be the top pinned comment here. And where else can they find you, Thomas?
Man, thomasdelauer.com, purathrive.com, PURATHRIVE. That's my company that I've got a couple of patents with. So things like just various forms of curcumin and just different, if you're into that kind of thing. So I never put pressure on people with that. Check that out. And yeah, that's the story of, man.
All right, guys. Well, you can find more at primaledgehealth.com. This has been awesome. We had a nice conversation, and we'll have to do this again sometime in the future. Maybe we can just talk cars next time. But you guys make sure to check out Thomas DeLauer, and we are out of here, guys.